All right, we still have got 476 more movies to go. The Iron Claw. We've been saying snippets of this, but you and I have not been able to gush about it together.
Nope.
You said it was good.
Yeah.
Man, this is great.
Sean Durkin, man. He knows his way around a sad story.
This is a phenomenal movie that I have gripes with, and I'm willing to put them by the wayside because of how good this movie hits. The Iron Claw is about the Von Erich brothers, a bunch of wrestling family, really. They even had some other people who weren't really wrestlers, but they just decided to call them family as well. They've all changed their names to the Von Erichs after their father, who used to play a, let's just say, a German persona back in the day, then had all of his kids join in this family legacy to be able to get the belt all before WWE even existed. It was WWF. They were the NWA before NWA.
Yeah,
the
this
National
is
Wrestling Association.
the regional wrestling era where they weren't even like these national kind of things overseeing it. It was all these like little shops that were run by different organizations. So
and they were like join each other. The beginning, the roots of it, which is so interesting.
The roots of wrestling, exactly. Yeah.
I wish they got a little bit more into that. I know that these guys were famous, and I wish that the movie showcased that a little bit more because it felt like you're saying they were like regionally famous. They can do a couple of autographs outside, and that was it. No, these guys were hounded down, and I think that maybe would have improved the movie a little bit more. I love it, but that would have improved it a bit more to understand how much pressure was on them. Mm-hmm. There is also just right off the bat some changes that are made for it to be a true story. One of them is excluding a brother from the narrative. Look, I'm gonna find a way to get my brother in there when you have a closing line as good as you do in this movie about brotherhood. You just have to. Make him a side character. I don't even know. Make him an uncle. But you cannot just exclude somebody. One brother cannot be mentioned through a credit at the end. My own personal opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I understand where Sean Durkin is coming from, and he ended up combining a lot of Chris and I believe it was Mike's stories.
Younger guy,
so that like their trajectories are both represented, even though only one of them's in it. So I guess to be clear, there are 5 brothers in the movie where there are actually 6 in real life. Mm-hmm. And you know, like it's tough, right? Because this is such a difficult story, and it is punishing, it is upsetting, it is sad, incredibly sad to watch. And I do wonder if there comes a point where it almost like tips over a line into being self-parody.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I can understand having issues with it, but I think the execution is artful enough and well done enough that I can excuse it.
And that's exactly what I'm getting at, man. I heard him talk about why he needed to exclude it, and I'm like, yeah, that would have, the ending of that brother's story would have also just been too much in this runtime.
Too much.
It was an executive decision. He said he talked with the brothers, and all I can say is artistically, Iron Claw is the first movie I could say is up there with Warrior for me. I don't even need to do the rest of the review. If you know what Warrior means, this is that movie, man. Shout out to everybody involved in this film. I think you and I kind of had similar standouts in this movie. First and foremost, out of the brothers, Harris Dickinson. This actor right here is next up. I don't know how else to put it. I see him in every single role that you're looking at right there on screen, and it's a completely different character every single time.
Yeah. Not to mention when we do our most anticipated movies of 2024, he's going to have a couple mentions there too. So he's he's kind of the guy right now. Yeah.
He is that dude. I thought he was incredible in the movie, especially for what he's supposed to be, in contrast to Zac Efron's character. He blew me away. He had that charisma. He was one of my favorite. He was my favorite character in the movie. And as much as I wanted to root for him for the best actor in the movie, this man would not let up. Talk about Holt McCallany, bro. This dude killed it.
Yeah, I mean, I really fell in love with him as a performer, obviously, in Mindhunter. I think a lot of people did, but he's just so menacing in this sort of patriarchal role as the head of the Von Erich family, and sort of this embodiment of the poisonous nature of toxic masculinity that these kids can find some sort of like happiness for themselves through the punishment of their bodies, and it's all in pursuit of his own failed dreams, right? So it's just such a tragic figure in this story, particularly because there doesn't really seem to be any kind of like remorse in it too.
He believes it,
really,
right?
Yeah, and it really like it's a character that really speaks to a type of person that maybe is like of a generation that's
Yes, sir.
dying out, you know, like a generation that is very like lunch pail. You go to work, you do your job, you come home. So it's not like what he's doing isn't meant to be abuse in his eyes, I guess.
He thinks it's survival. Yeah.
Right. But it's something that we now, with our modern lens, can look at and see for the abuse that it is.
For the ripple effects that would come when you have one of the sons asking you, hey, I think dad's being a little too harsh, and no one does anything about that. Let the brothers deal with it. And the way the brothers deal with it is damn near mourning each other. I thought his performance was incredible in the movie. Everyone else involved, I know that Zack Efron is the lead, and we have some discussions in the chat about him as a best performer of the year. I'll put it to you simply. Holt is one of the best supporting performances of the year, but Zach and I already maxed out at 7. Like, there are too many good supporting performances, and I still want to find a way to fit him in there, which is why our Intercut Awards are definitely going to be able to cover as many supporting performances as possible.
Yeah.
He barely makes the cut, and I think he's the best performer in here. I am saddened to say that there are too many good performances this year to not be able to praise Zac Efron, bless his soul, for what is his best performance that he's done to date. I don't think he's been better. An incredible performance from Zach. The physicality of it, his emotionality of it, the delivery of that final line that he gives in this movie is so good.
So devastating.
But he just doesn't fit in a year stacked with so many other performances.
Yeah, unfortunately, and maybe part of it is because the Iron Claw came out so late that it's hard. Like, it'd be easier if we like slotted him in early than it is to push him down the order. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I don't know, but it is really like an incredible performance, and I think in a lot of ways uses his gifts because it is such a physical performance, and part of it is just like staring at his jawline and his muscles that he can achieve that kind of physicality. But also he is so tender and kind of soft spoken and world weary in this way that I think Efron does a really excellent job of communicating. You know, I think having not been someone who was super familiar with the High School Musical franchise, I'm most familiar with Zac Efron in his kind of like party boy type of roles,
Neighbors?
the Neighbors stuff, and this is just a completely different register for him to be operating in. But it's something that works so well, and you are immediately like drawn into his sadness, and you just want to like wrap him up and give him a hug in this role. He's so good.
Abby had mentioned, how would you compare him to another Oscar ranked movie, Foxcatcher, and where you had Channing Tatum, another character who's known for, being a heartthrob, and his performance there? I think those are comparable.
Yeah, I think they're actually very, very comparable roles because they are both these very physical performances, but they're very like quiet, dramatic movies. They're not. While they're about fighters, they're not necessarily about the fighting, right? Or I guess the wrestling. We should be a little more accurate.
The internal battles inside.
I would give the nod to Channing Tatum. I thought Channing Tatum was so excellent in Foxcatcher.
Maybe
part of that is because it's a little bit more of like a psychologically manipulative movie. Like the relationship between him and Steve Carell is oddly somehow more toxic and fucked up than the relationship between Zac Efron and Hope McElhaney's character in Iron Claw.
Yeah. No, it's a good performance. I think that they were both killing it in that movie, but I will, just for the sake of this, I'm going to give it to Zac Efron because there's not one line that Channing had in that movie to hit me as much as his did here.
True. I still think Iron Claw is the better movie.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Than Foxcatcher.
Okay. I prefer it for sure. I'd have to rewatch Foxcatcher because that was a while ago. I mean, I saw Foxcatcher in the middle of Birdman and Whiplash. That was a year.
Yeah, that was a year. 2014. Wow.
Oh, man. Another one here, I think it was Pink Sweets had said that I must not remember High School Musical 3. Oh, I remember High School Musical 3. In High School Musical 3, my boy had that one vein when he was going to make that opening shot in the intro. My man has a vein on top of a vein in this movie. He woke up crazy, bro. When you first see him in this film, he went all out. That man is bricked up. I don't know how else to say it. He worked out way too much for this movie. I thought he was already big in Baywatch. You remember him in Baywatch?
Yeah.
He was trying to go up against The Rock.
But
This
is different.
This is different.
Granted,
It's crazy.
I think I would not be surprised if there's some like HGH involved in this one, but still.
Could be something involved. That montage scene was real.
Yeah.
A really fantastic movie. I don't know how else to put it. I highly recommend it. This is one that would have made my top 15. I'm sure with a rewatch might even go a little higher. Like, this is an incredible movie through and through. It sucks that it came out right towards the end of the year because I know that which was Martha, May, Marlene, tongue twister always for me. I know that's a standout for you of that year. I was definitely pushing for the Nest because I thought that was an incredible, almost kind of biopic-ish movie about this guy, the director, and his parents as they were moving over. And Dead Ringers was a fantastic miniseries of this year. So we're big Sean Durkin fans here on the podcast, and Iron Claw just continues to add to that legacy.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I see a lot of people who are lamenting the fact that this came out so late in the year and it's probably not going to be in the Oscars discussion because we decided the nominees earlier and earlier. First of all, not that big of a deal. Ultimately, the movie is the thing that's going to have a legacy. And secondly, I think this is kind of the movie that makes Sean Durkin one of those guys that it's like, oh, his next movie is going to be nominated for Oscars, right? Like now he's on the radar. I don't know if The Nest or Martha, May, Marlene really put him in that stratosphere the way that the Iron Claw seems to be doing.
That's fair, for sure. I saw you had one question start up, and then we'll move on to the next one.
What did I start up? Oh,
yeah, I found it.
Yeah, Luna asked, do we think if the Iron Claw was a TV show, the fifth brother could have been included, or would it still be the same artistic problem? There's almost a version of this where you could imagine like each one is an episode that ends in a different brother's death. I don't know if that's just like too bleak of a show. Like, I don't know if you keep tuning in to that kind of show, and maybe that's a little bit more like salacious and kind of not fitting to the material. I think one of the things that perhaps reducing the number of brothers down does is it makes it more about the actual lived experience of it and less just about like, wow, so many tragedies, right? Like it's just, it becomes less of a pile-on. But I think...
But it still was, though, no?
Yeah.
Like, not to play devil's advocate with it, but
true.
if you had like a tragedy, you're going to be like, I don't know, it was like 24 people. Can we cut it down to 12 that got hurt in this tragedy? You can't deny the tragic part of it because that's why the story stands out.
It's tough, and maybe this is something that you can only come to the correct conclusion of when you've been wrestling with the script for 2 years the way that Sean Durkin did. But I do think that I prefer this being a movie because I think particularly with things that are this sad, things that are this sort of like upsetting, you kind of got to do it in one sitting. It doesn't linger the same way otherwise.
That'd be ridiculous. I would only like it to be able to expand on, like we were saying, the theatricality of it, how big they were in the sphere of the wrestling world.
Maybe if they're trying to do more of like this is what regional wrestling was like in the 80s.
From their perspective, that'd be interesting. Yeah. And then the repercussions of it growing to what happens to their family, that would be good. Add more brothers, kill more brothers off. That'd be great. You know what? Just go all out artistically.
Yeah.
But as it stands, with the decisions that they had to make for the Iron Claw, I think excel as a movie. I know everybody in there was involved. I know Kevin's kids themselves were part of the stunt teams there. Eddie Guerrero's brother, I think, if I'm not mistaken, was the stunt coach as well. There's just a lot of good behind the scenes for the Iron Claw. The last bit that I'll say about this, and I highly recommend it, combo price. Go see it in the theater if you can. They need to change Ric Flair, bro.
Yeah, it was a pretty bad Ric Flair impression, I gotta say.
You know, they weren't showing him for a bit in the movie. They just mentioned him like this ghost. And then he appears, and I'm like, I understood. Got it. Nope.
Yeah.
Woo, no.
No, I mean, it's funny. Like, I've been going to some Devils games this year,
Damn.
and Ric Flair is kind of their like unofficial mascot in some
For
ways.
real?
They're always playing Ric Flair videos that after goals people go woo and
That's
stuff like
funny.
that. There are like 3 or 5 better Ric Flair impersonators in the arena at
Wow.
every game than that dude they got for the movie.
It was a little rough, dude. I'm not gonna lie, but hey, for everyone else involved, I thought it was a fantastic movie. Iron Claw, check it out wherever you can because it's one of the best movies of the year.